Okay, so firstly, thanks to Niall and organisers and everyone in Interreg Care Peat project for the invitation here today. So NPWS are delighted to be so part of the training project that's happening out on and to contribute in terms of resources and works on this project. It's really cutting edge. It's great to be involved. So today, along with Regan, who's an pilot in NPWS, I'm just going to outline what NPWS are doing, what policies set down, what our restoration programme will be, what we've done in the past, what we plan to do in the future, and Shane will talk a little bit about research and undertaking and peatlands, which will help inform future policies. Okay, as the Minister has already outlined, the restoration programme as such is set down in the principles of the National Peatland Strategy and the National Raised Bog SAC Management Plan 2017 to 2022. So there's many actions there within the strategy to do with climate action, climate change, land management, etc. So we're early view of the strategy at present and look forward to consulting with the general public on that shortly. Okay, the programme from government has also set down some very good commitments for peatlands. The department will be leading on the action for maximising the benefits for biodiversity. There's also a number of actions in relation to national land use, LULUCF and national accounting targets, which we've worked on over the coming period. So as you all know, our raised bogs give huge benefit from battery services, natural carbon, capital, carbon storage and sequestration. And also they're a huge source that we found working in NPWS with people and turf crushers and local communities. It's a huge source of pride to have this natural resource on their doorstep. So why do we need a national raised bog conservation strategy? Well, I suppose over the years, our raised bogs have suffered losses and that we're under a variety of threats and pressures, with the result that we've lost almost 37% of our raised bog SAC network and 42% of our raised bog NHA network in the past 20 to 30 years. So we have a duty and legal obligation to protect and restore these in line with the Habitats Directive obligation, and also, the European Commission has asked Ireland to begin a process to rectify this loss. So our bogs have been used for the needs of those generations at the time. So I suppose what we want now is for those bogs that have been harvested or have been degraded to be able to move them forward from this to essentially this. So this is Cara Bog in County Offaly, one of our natural heritage reserves. So how do we go about this? I suppose the policy for National Raised Bog for Restoration Programme is set down in our National Raised Bog SAC Management Plan. So the plan sets the site-specific conservation objectives for our protected raised bogs, and it sets out the conservation status, which is considered bad to declining for a raised bog network. We set targets for our active raised bog, the Annex 1 priority habitat within that network, and we've set out a programme of conservation measures to I suppose, continue to manage and conserve and restore our raised bog network while also addressing the concern of stakeholders. This plan is also going to review at present. So in that programme of conservation measures is the restoration strategy as such. So we had intended to restore all our raised bog SACs and NHAs within 3 6-year cycles. This can now be accelerated due to an increase in funding for NPWS last year and this year and next year. It sets out a number of preventative measures in place to ensure that the raised bogs are protected. A review of the NHA network has been undertaken, and that will be implemented in due course as well. We set out priorities to support others that are engaged in conservation methods and also supports for local communities. It sets out our research and monitoring model as well. So what are we doing to restore our raised bog network? So there's a number of strands to our programme. As set down in the Climate Action Plan, we're hoping to restore 22,000 hectares of raised bog SACs and NHAs. The target is to achieve over 3,500 hectares of active, degraded and peat formal habitat within that network through raised bog restoration techniques. In 2020, with 5 million in funding allocated to NPWS, we we are aiming to restore 9 sites in the Midlands region across 7 counties, and this is a part of our Just Transition policies. So Board of Mona, following a public procurement process, was awarded the contract to project management and undertake the works across these 9 sites. So there's good potential across these 9 sites. We hope to achieve, in terms of carbon potential, a reduction of circa 4,945 tonnes of CO2. As well as the programme that's been project management by Board of Mona, with EU Life funding, the EU Life Living Bog project is operating across 12 sites in the Midlands region. So that project is near completion, but they've done some excellent work with 10 of the 12 sites completed to date, and they've done some fantastic community engagement initiatives, and were recently nominated for a Natura 2000 award. They were finalists for their efforts in that. We also support and are working with other agencies, semi-state agencies such as Board of Mona and Creelcha, to restore lands within the network. There's ongoing and research monitoring also being undertaken. That's just an outline of the 12 project sites in the LIFE project. As I say, they've exceeded their original target. And to date, they've inserted over 10,000 dams, and have developed a number of amenities in conjunction with local communities, such as boardwalks, walkway, and signage. So since 2018, we've undertaken restoration works on a number of sites, NHAs and SACs. We've inserted over 3,500 dams and almost 10,000 kilometres of bunding. This is with Cloncrow NHA being one of them. So this is an example of the type of plans that we developed. So this for Cloncrow would set out the boundary of the NHA. We'd set out the types of dams that we're going to insert. The blue lines here, I don't know if you can see my cursor, the blue lines here would be the Peat dams being inserted. We're inserting trench funding here as well. So these are all new novel techniques for NPWS. They've been used in the UK for some time, but not on raised bogs. So this is genuinely a new approach in Ireland, and we're happy to be part of that kind of pioneering efforts for raised bog restoration. So as Terry has outlined, this is a recent photo from Cloncrow, which sets out the bund, that finger bund that we've inserted, and trench bunds along this area here. So these are our priority sites for 2020, where works have completed or are due to complete very shortly. Some of those sites are mainly, such as Moot Bog, is state-owned lands, the former industrially excavated area that we're working to restore. And we're hoping that the remainder of the 9 sites will be completed in early 2021. So for 2021, with the increase in funding allocation, we're hoping to complete the remainder of 9 sites, and also an additional 2,500 hectares of raised bog within the network. As well as that, we'll be also undertaking restoration works on a number of NHAs with the assistance of local contractors. So I think it's quite important that local contractors are also supported as part of this restoration programme. Many of these contractors are former turf cutters, so they're actually restoring the bogs that they may originally have cut. So I think we're coming full circle there. We're also hoping to work with Board of Mona on another EU Life integration project proposal that's currently being considered by the European Commission. So this is just an example of a peat dam we would have inserted. You can see here, and here's another example of a barrier dam that the Living Bog project have inserted on a project site in Longford. So really good results just being seen in this site after a couple of years. The bog is re-wetting nicely. So just in terms of restoration plans, so you have to prepare restoration plans for all the bogs that we intend to restore, as well as site-specific conservation objectives. They're being developed for all our 53 raised bog SACs and our raised bog NHA plans. It's of, I suppose, absolute importance that we need to consult with the landowners and stakeholders. We don't go into private lands without agreement, without consent. We're focusing predominantly on the state lands at present, but we would hope to have a more holistic approach to the restoration of all the SSCs and NHAs, and we will work with the various groups, landowners and stakeholders on that before we commence any works. It's just an example of another type of plan that we would develop for Clara Bog NHA. Just to say, I suppose, like when we're developing these plans, we try not to block any drains in the periphery that may impact on agricultural land. And if we feel that they should be blocked, we will absolutely work with the local landowner and farmers. And if we can't reach agreement, we do these plans per zones. We move on to the next area. Just to say that for information, we've undertaken, developed a manual on best practice in raised bog restoration, and that's available on the NPWS website. Just in terms of blanket bogs, and Minister Noonan has touched on this, there's 55 blanket bogs designated as SACs and 73 as natural heritage areas. The Wild Atlantic Nature Project will be commencing shortly and will undertake conservation measures on 23 of those sites. I'll just talk briefly about the challenges and enablers to restoration. So, you know, the ground conditions are not always suitable. The works are weather dependent. We need to have funding and resources in place. Will require a sizable amount of funding to complete the SSC and NHA network. Before we can actually get machines on site, there's an awful lot of arbitrary works that needs to be undertaken. Property rights on bogs are complex as well. There can be lots of areas that are unregistered to landowners. We have various types of property. It also takes time to undertake the monitoring, the ecological surveying and hydrological monitoring that needs to be put in place. But above all, you know, we need to work with the local landowners and engage on these plans before we actually bring any machines on site. So just to say, like, the community groups have been excellent and are doing great work out on the ground. So to help encourage, I suppose, conservation of our blanket bogs and raised bogs, be it designated or not, we've put in place a scheme within the department, the Peatlands Community Engagement Scheme, to promote public engagement with and awareness of our natural heritage. So as the Minister said, the deadline for that is on the 20th of November, and we welcome any applications for that. Okay, thank you. I'll just hand over to my colleague now, Shane Regan.
Okay, Shane.
Thanks, Suzanne. I'll just get this moving. Right, thanks, Suzanne. So that was a really nice overview, I think, of what the National Parks and Wildlife Service do. I want to keep this relatively short and just say a few words on the research that we do. And I guess the main message I want to convey is that our management and our policies are very much informed by research. And research has been done for many years, mainly by our former colleague Jim Ryan and others. And we know some basic facts that we use to guide our management and restoration measures. One, we know that the distribution of ecology that we find on raised bogs in particular is mainly based on the slope of the peatland. We know that the hydrogeology is important, or the hydraulic properties of the peat. And we know that the water table duration is critical, i.e. how much time the water spends at or a particular level over the course of a year. And in many respects, 0.5 is the magic number. We know that the water table is at or above the summer ground level in a bog. The ground level in a bog goes up and down over the course of a year. And we know that's exceeded around 50% of the time. We know that an intact bog sequesters around 0.5 ton of carbon in CO2 per hectare per year. That's just under 2 tons of CO2. That can get higher, that can be 1 or 2 tons per year, but on average it's around 0.5. But the optimal threshold for the slope is around 0.5%. So if the slope is greater than 0.5% on a low-lying raised bog, the chances of the ecology that we want coming back and colonizing the bog, i.e. our different sphagnums, is going to be limited. So really we want to get the slopes low, under 0.5%. And on top of that, we were continuing to innovate and adapt our management based on the research, whether it's done by ourselves or by our colleagues in universities and different practitioners. So we always want to improve our knowledge base and, as I say, incorporate the different technologies, the techniques, the methods, the skill sets as they develop. As we know, this is the world is fastly developing technologically in terms of remote sensing data, satellites, that type of thing, technology for measuring greenhouse gases, water levels, all this type of stuff. So we're aware of that, and we want to incorporate that into our plans. and also to engage with other policies and strategies. I mean, the CAP was mentioned earlier, the EIP, European Innovation Partnerships, the PAF, which is our mechanism for devising how we're going to kind of restore different ecosystems. So this is really mainly related to sites that aren't SACs and NHAs, so obviously they're just a relative part of the entire peatland network in Ireland. And as has been said a few times over the meeting, peatland is an enormous carbon emitter because of land use management mainly. We're engaging with other national and EU projects, EPA, LIFE, as mentioned earlier, Interreg, etc. And also looking at different ways of financing nature initiatives related to the environment, the ecosystems we're charged with when maintaining and protecting, but also with water and the Water Framework Directive, just huge crossovers with all this type of stuff. And we're engaging with our different partners in that. And just to give you an example of some of the current work that we're doing, we're still carrying out greenhouse gas monitoring. This is the site, it's one of the best sites we've come across in terms of the sphagnum coverage. It's actually transition mire rather than a raised bog. But we're carrying out a project here to see how much carbon it's sequestering, mainly to understand what kind of thresholds we need to get at in our restoration plans, i.e. what kind of water levels to be looking at, what kind of grade is this type of stuff. So we're carrying out that type of work. We're also carrying out some eddy covariance work, or soon will be. So this is All Saints Bog, which Terry had a nice video of. This is one of the priority sites that Suzanne mentioned. And what we're doing here is that we're going to try and measure how the bog recovers in terms of its CO2 dynamic as and when it's restored. And this bog will actually be quite a nice observation site for the national parks and Ireland. We're going to carry out some novel restoration methods that we haven't done at other bogs, dams and berms, controlling the water levels, just to try and get it as good as we can in an area that was mined previously. And the eddy covariance is quite a sophisticated method of measuring CO2, basically measures the turbulence in the wind. So this will be novel for NPWS. And we're also going to carry out a similar endeavour at one of the sites not identified yet in the Blanket Bog Light Programme too. So these will be two nice sites for national parks. And incidentally, I mean, this type of research and infrastructure is available to researchers in the universities of Ireland to look at, use, and to help them in their careers also. We're also experimenting with new remote sensing techniques. This is a bog, scrab bog. So mapping these bog sites, fens and bogs, etc. is quite labour intensive. It's difficult. So we're looking at how we can combine that with new remote sensing technologies, and this is quite a fastly developing area. This is a project that's ongoing, and this is some results that we're just taking this summer. And we're also looking at, or are developing a hydrometric network. Hydrometric is water level runoff monitoring, that type of thing. And this is from a site in the Dublin Wicklow Mountains near Liffey Head Bog. We're looking at how much flow is coming out of an area that's degraded, and we hope to restore this in the relatively near future, and we'll see how that responds. And it's also very important for water quality. I mean, the water that runs through this bog ends up going into Manor Bride, which actually serves the greater Dublin region, which uses 80% of all the water drank in Ireland. So you can see how the linkages between human health, water resources, and peatland restoration is all connected. And also we hope to put this on a research network across Europe called eLiter, and we're in conversation about that. There's lots of research projects going on at the moment. There's Smart Bog, there's Swamp and UCD, there's an Ecometrics and TCD, and we engage with these projects and help them where we can. And I'll leave it at this. So just the different land management plans that that I alluded to. The EIP, one example I'd like to highlight is the Pearl Mussel project, which is a really nice project, and basically they're kind of rewarding farmers for keeping their lands in good condition in respect to the pearl mussel that is in these rivers. But a lot of this land is peatland, and doing good work on the peatland in relation to farmland has good impact on the peatland. Obviously, even if it's not designated, it doesn't really matter. If it's in good condition, that's good for the environment, and then that's good for the pearl mussel too. And also we want to look at maybe adapting the peatland code to Ireland, and that's basically trading for land use management. Okay, I'll leave it at that.